When we think of an animal that can survive long periods without water, a camel is usually what comes to mind first. They are able to survive up to 10 days without water. But forget camels, there's another animal which can survive up to 30 years without a single drop of water. This tiny animal is the tardigrade, or more commonly known as the water bear. The microscopic animal is usually less than a millimeter long and can be found almost anywhere in the planet. However, regardless of where they live, all tardigrades are considered aquatic because they require a thin layer of water around their bodies. Water is extremely important because it allows metabolism to occur, which is the chemical reactions in an organism's cells that are necessary to maintain life. So how exactly do they survive such long periods without water? The answer is anhydrobiosis, which means life without water. In this stage, metabolic activity is so low it cannot be detected, which is why for a long time, scientists thought they were simply dying. This, however, is not true because when rehydrated, they can return back to normal life. Although small, tardigrades are pretty indestructible. It is championed for its remarkable abilities to survive numerous environmental extremes on top of dehydration. Although anhydrobiosis appears to be a strategy for coping with water loss, the dry state actually allows them to become more tolerant to other environmental stressors, often first being required for them to survive other extremes. In this dry state, tardigrades can survive far beyond the coldest and hottest temperatures on Earth. It can also withstand levels of radiation more than 500 times the human limit. Tardigrades have also been shown to survive at a pressure 6 times greater than at the deepest point on Earth. Because of this, tardigrades were sent to the final frontier and the ultimate test, outer space. More than 50% of tardigrades survives. They manage to survive the vacuum of space, high levels of radiation, and the extreme cold all at once. But how does it actually enter anhydrobiosis? Here we look at the inner workings of the cell that allow it to do just that. Tardigrades must first slow down the speed water is lost to allow enough time for the production of protective molecules. They slow down the rate of dehydration by adopting a tun state, which looks like a barrel. In order to do so, they curl up their body longitudinally and retract their head and legs. See how the tun state is much smaller than it normally is? This smaller surface area decreases the rate of water loss. This is where tardigrades' tiny size come in handy, as it allows them to minimize the physical stress when shrinking. At the same time, a wax is produced to protect the surface, further reducing water loss. As water is being lost, proteins begin to start losing their shape and hence their function. This is known as denaturation. When proteins become misfolded, they like to come together and fuse. Both these events are problematic, and so tardigrades utilize a molecular shielding mechanism to prevent this. Protective molecules like group 3 Lea proteins coat them, thereby preventing denaturation and aggregation, while small heat shock proteins can even refold misfolded proteins back into their correct shape. Tardigrades' cells are also believed to undergo vitrification. As the cell produces Lea proteins and tardigrade disordered proteins, these form a glass-like matrix. Parts of the cells which are sensitive to dryness are sealed in this position to prevent them from unfolding, fusing, and breaking up. It is also likely that this matrix prevents cells from collapsing by filling the space that was originally filled with water. At the same time, the cell experiences oxidative stress, during which the cell is overloaded with free radicals. Free radicals are extremely reactive oxygen-containing molecules that damage important components of the cell. When reactive oxygen species overwhelm the cell's defense mechanisms, this results in cell damage. The cell responds by producing more antioxidants, which converts the free radicals to harmless molecules. They also produce a DNA protection protein unique to them known as DSUP, which significantly reduces DNA breaks caused by radiation or free radical activity. Although we have come a long way in understanding what makes these little guys so resilient, a lot remains unknown. The mechanisms mentioned earlier are only proposed models, and it may be that both models are in fact one complex, well-organized mechanism. Moreover, the regulatory networks that control the response and synthesis of these protective molecules remain undefined. However, this field of study is extremely active, and there's good reason for this. By understanding how tardigrades protect their sensitive biological molecules, we can apply this knowledge to different fields. Dry vaccines could be made which would eliminate the need for refrigeration, hence making it more accessible in developing countries and in rural areas. It could be used to conserve human cells and organs for transplants, and can potentially be used to increase the shelf life of food and help develop crops which are tolerant to the ever-mounting climate changes. Ultimately, these tiny, chubby water bears hold insight into the fundamental question of life and death and the fine line between them.